Okay, hi everybody. Thank you. Shira, is that you being the hostess from far away? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, you're amazing. I'm not even going to ask you where you are. Thank you. You want to just make me a co-host?
Yes, I will. Hi from Corey.
Okay. Hey, Corey.
Hi, Rifki.
Oh my gosh, that is totally your color. Scrub's color looks so good on him. Well, after all of our learning and davening in Tehillim, we are very, very, very grateful to Hashem that Corey is on the road to recovery. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Okay. Amazing. Thank you, Shira. Okay. So I am going to share my screen so we can all look at some psukim from this week's Parsha together. And here we go. Missing all the people that I usually get to learn with live. I know it's not the same when we're on a screen, when we're flat instead of in person, but we're going to take what we could get. We had a little exposure in our family, so I feel like maybe a big exposure. We'll see. God willing, everybody will be fine, but I just didn't want to take any chances. So, okay, let us learn Parshas Vayishlach together. Really, we're just going to scratch the surface. We're literally only going to focus on the first few psukim of this week's Parsha. And that's really for totally selfish reasons, because one of my favorite psukim in all of Tanakh is in the first few psukim of this week's Parsha. And so I got stuck. I couldn't go any further in looking at some of the other amazing stories that take place in this week's Parsha. So I leave that to all of you to look at and study and come to deeper understanding of. But I would like us just to focus on the initial psukim in Parshas Vayishlach. So as we know, Yaakov and Esav, the last time they were together, parted on not such wonderful terms. And Rivka, the mother of the twins, had sent her son Yaakov away for fear that her other son Esav was going to kill him. She is the one who advised her son Yaakov to, we'll say, very assertively, maybe even aggressively, take the bracha from his brother Esav. And when Esav finds out, he is furious. And he says clearly out loud, I am going to kill my brother. And so Yaakov, that's when his journey begins. And as we know, over the last few weeks, he has done quite well for himself. It hasn't been easy. It's been quite complicated, actually, but he's grown an incredible family. He has his 4 wives, and he has many children, thank God. And now it has come time, and it seems like this happens with the birth of Yosef, that Yaakov realizes it is time for him to go home. There may be other reasons why, but that seems to be the catalyst in the psukim from last week's Parsha. It's time, he says to his wives, it's time for us to leave. We know from last week's Parsha that Lavan chases after them, and they have a whole confrontation, we'll say. But now Yaakov is on his way home. He's going back to the land of Israel for the first time in many, many years. I believe it's 22 years. And this week's Parsha begins with Yaakov's preparations for meeting up with his brother Esav for the first time since he left home. And the reason why this is so significant is because we are going to learn, there's a lot to learn, but we are going to take a look at Yaakov's approach. How does he handle this impending potential disastrous situation? How does he prepare himself? How does he prepare his family? And in what aspects of the way that Yaakov does this can we maybe see some hints or some echoes of some of the things that we feel when we are facing a potential crisis? So let's take a look at the psukim, and then we'll focus on one of them. So Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim Lefanav. Yaakov sends messengers. He sends either angels or human messengers in front of him. El Esav El Achiv, right? To Esav, his brother. Now, this right away tells us, if we read it, if we're looking just at the surface level of the psukim, that's how Yaakov is relating to his brother Esav, right? He's checking on Esav, right? Is he still Esav, like the same Esav he's always been? Is he Achiv? Is he still my brother? Like, how does he feel about me? And maybe even we can see from here that Yaakov is looking to have a reconciliation with his brother, right? And he sends these messengers, Artsa Seir, Sedei Edom, to the land of Seir, which is in the larger area of Edom. And the commentaries right away want to know, how does Yaakov know that that's where Esav lives? Right? We know that Esav moved there with his family because the Psukim told us that previously. But the last time Yaakov was in touch with his family, Esav was living at home or near his home. We know that he and his wives were causing his mother Rivka great pain, right? The Psukim told us that. And then later on, after Yaakov has left the scene, Esav also leaves eventually. And the Mefarshim wonder, like, why, how does Yaakov know that he's necessarily going to bump into Esav in this area? And it seems like, news travels, right? Even when there are siblings or families that are not really in touch with each other anymore, unfortunately, word still travels. So that's one of the explanations, that he heard through the grapevine that his brother had moved. The other thing is that he knew who Esav had married. And so some of those wives had come from this area. He made an assumption that after a certain amount of time, Esav would have moved back to be with his wives' families. And those were the people that he felt very connected to. And so that's another possibility. So he knows that on his way home back to where his parents live, that he is going to, and potentially he's aware that his mother may have already passed away, but as he's traveling back, he's going to go through this land of that Esav is currently living in with his entourage. And he does not want to take the chance that he's accidentally going to bump into Esav, right? That would not be a happy coincidence from Yaakov's perspective. And so he reaches out to him to sort of gauge the temperature. Let's see what he tells the messengers. Vayitzavotam lemor, right? He tells the messengers, this is what you should say to my brother, la Adoni la Esav, to my master, to Esav. So already he's putting, a distance between himself and his brother, and he's giving the messengers a mission statement, right? Relate to him as though he's the master, and then say to him, Ko Amar Avdecha Yaakov. This is what your servant Yaakov has said. So relate to my brother as though he's the master and as though I am the servant, right? And then just give him the update, Im Lavan Garti, Va'echar Arata. I had been living with Uncle Lavan all of this time. Right? I haven't gone back home. I haven't reached out to you. I've been sort of doing my own thing. And now I'm making my way back home, right? Arata. Until now, we've been living separate lives, but now I'm coming to sort of re-engage what I think today therapists, psychologists call my original family, right? My parents, my sibling, like I'm attempting to create some kind of reconciliation, to bring our family back together. And then he says, Vayihi li shor v'chamor, tzon ve'eved v'shifcha, and I've done well, right? I have a lot of possessions at this point. I have a big family. It's interesting that he mentions the animals first, and then he mentions the people, the servants. Va'eshlecha lahagid la'adoni limtzon be'einecha, right? Limtzochein be'einecha, right? And I'm sending you this message because I'm trying to make nice. I'm trying to let you know that I'm not just barging in on you. I'm giving you warning that we're passing through your land. I want you to know that I'm not a one-man show. I've accumulated quite a bit. What does he not share? He doesn't share anything about the fact that he has a family. He doesn't share any of the personal details. This is almost like a business interaction. And the Mefarshim explain that he was really trying, when he sent these messengers, he wanted them to gauge Esav's mood. Is he still mad? And if he's still mad, can you soften him up? Can you butter him up a bit? Can you let me know what he's thinking? And also in the process, as you address him as my master and call me the servant, can you please try and let him know that I am totally acknowledging that he is the stronger of the two of us, that I am willing to subordinate myself to him, to be subservient to him. That's the message that Yaakov sends to Esav. Incidentally, we're not going to talk about this, but Chazal, the sages, really take Yaakov to task for this. They're very upset with him. They feel that he sinned in this area, that here Esav is a clear Rasha. He's an evil man. And we don't pander to evil people, right? I know, Yaakov, you were nervous, you were scared, but really, you're Yaakov Avinu. What are you degrading yourself in front of a person like this? And he really is brought to task in many different sources in the Midrashim and by some of the commentaries, that this was not the way to go. So that's such an interesting thing to note. And I think that idea really plays itself out. This idea of Yaakov being so nervous, so scared, plays itself out in the psukim and how he chooses to handle himself. The lengths, the steps that he takes to go to protect himself are not the behaviors of somebody who is overly confident here, or even regular confident. Here we see, based on this next pasuk, how Yaakov is feeling. Vayira Yaakov me'od. Yaakov is really, really afraid. He's experiencing yirah, like a feeling of awe, dread. Vayitzer lo, right? He is feeling like he's feeling narrow, right? He's feeling like closed in on, a sense of, as Safaria explains, anxiety. Like he feels totally locked in on all sides. So we can all imagine what that feels like a complete feeling of terror. So what does he do? He separates his nation, meaning the group of people that were with him. He takes all of his possessions, the people, of course, when the Torah is recording Yaakov, he talks about his family first. He separates the people, and he separates the livestock, and he creates two camps. And he says, Vayomer, Im yavo Esav el hamachaneh ha'achat v'hikahu. If Esav comes and attacks one of the camps, v'haya hamachaneh hanishar lifleita, well, then at least the other camp will be safe. What is Yaakov preparing for? Total catastrophe, total disaster. He is literally separating the two camps. This has, very much, unfortunately, it gives us those images that we hear from the Holocaust and other difficult times in Jewish history, where parents had to make choices over like which children to put where, which members of the family, which precious belongings, which family heirlooms to put where. Like he's literally preparing for the end of his family as he knows it. And at the very least, he's hoping to salvage half. So it gives us a sense of what Yaakov is feeling. And he is preparing himself physically for anything that is to come. And Chazal, the sages, point out, this is what a Jew does. Obviously, they don't have to experience the terror and the anxiety part. We're not commanded to do that. But when a Jew does feel this way, when a person does feel this much anxiety, this much terror, and this much fear, the first thing they have to do is take matters into their own hands, right? And come up with a plan and execute the plan. It's not an overly complicated plan. It doesn't seem like he overthinks this. He just gets it done, right? He makes a decision that he's got to protect his family as best as he can, protect his possessions as best he can. And so he does something active, right? He doesn't just sit around and daven. We're going to get to that part. But his first response is to take action. Okay, so we know that this is the case. We know that we are commanded to not rely on miracles and to not expect miracles, but to go to the doctor, right? To access all available treatments, to call the attorney or to call whatever professional we need to go and exercise, to take care of ourselves, to do the physical things we need to do when we have a fear that something is looming on the other side. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing, and now we're getting to my favorite psukim, really in all of Tanakh. Thank you to Yonatan Razel, the singer and composer. That's the reason why I love these psukim so much. So let's read Pasuk Yud. Vayomer Yaakov. Now we're going to get to the tefillah part. Yaakov says, Elokei avi Avraham ve'elokei avi Yitzchak. Right? This is the initial part of prayer. He turns to God. He's Pona El Hashem, and he says to him, he addresses him as the God of his father and the God of his grandfather, really his grandfather and his father. Hashem, right? You are the God of Haya, Hoveh, V'yihiyeh, right? You're the God of the past, the present, and the future. That's what we know Yud Kei Vav Kei stands for. That's what it represents. The God that is above all time, the God who has always been here and always will be here, the God of compassion and the God of mercy. You also happen to be the God, Ha'omer Elai, who said to me, Shuv la'artzacha, it's time to go home, u'lemoladetzcha, and to the place of your birth, ve'iti va'imach, and I'm going to be good to you. Right? This is what one of the things that prompts Yaakov to leave the house of Lavan is he gets a haftacha, he gets a promise from God that everything's going to work out and it's time indeed to go home. And then, I don't know if it's as exciting for all of you as for me, but whenever I hear there's psukim, I feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Pasuk Yud Aleph. He says to Hashem, Katonti mikol hachasadim umikol haamet asher asita et avdecha. Katonti, I am katan, I am small. Mikol hachasadim, from all of the kindnesses, umikol haamet, and from all of the truth. You see that Sefaria translates it as not truth, but steadfast, like from the language of emuna, because emes and emuna have a lot to do with each other. They come from the same shoresh, the same roots of aim, which of course is mother. There's a lot of deep stuff there that I'm not sure I fully understand, but the little that I understand, I read in a book from Rabbi Akiva Tatz many, many years ago that stuck with me, which is that the unique trait of a woman, of a potential aim, a woman who could become a mother, is this steadfastness, this stick with itness, right? This I'm in it for the long haul. I don't lose hope. We know that that is a defining trait of the women of Jewish history and ourselves as well, that we, just because things look bleak, we don't give up. And that is really what it means when the Torah tells us that Moshe put up his hands in the war with Amalek, and the language of the psukim is vayu yadav emuna. His hands were faith. No, it means his hands were steadfast, meaning they were totally reliable. They just stayed up there until the war was over. And so emes and emuna, which both come from that shoresh of aim, are very much connected. And that's how Sefaria translates it based on some of the commentaries, that it's either Hashem, you have shown me so much kindness and I didn't deserve it. I became small from it. So much kindness and so much truth. Or more likely, you've consistently showed me so much truth, so much kindness, right? You have been true to your word with all of the kindness you have promised me, right? And of course, he talks about himself as an Eved Hashem, as a servant of God. And then he concludes the pasuk in a very, very interesting way. Ki v'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh. Because with my staff, with my walking stick, I crossed this Jordan River. V'ata hayiti lishnei machanot, and now I became two camps. Okay, so I want to take the pasuk to like one part at a time because there's a lot here to talk about. So the first thing is, as we mentioned, that first Yaakov took action and then he engages in tefillah. He engages in prayer. He calls out to God. And when he calls out to God, he does so in the name of his father, his grandfather, and his father. And this is something obviously that we do every single time that we say Shemona Esrei. That's our lead, right? We always lead with, remember all those people in our history that you love so much, do it for them. This is also something that I think is very worthwhile for us to maybe personalize a bit more, right? It's not just Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Once I'm going back to my roots, so I'm also in my mind thinking about all of my ancestors, right? The ones that I was blessed to know and the ones I wasn't blessed to know. They all had so much merit. They all did so much good, even if I don't know exactly what it all was. But I know that there was a lot of good in their merit and the merit of all the Tehillim that my great-great-great-great-grandmother must have said, or in the merit of the self-sacrifice that so many of them made, right? For Torah or for mitzvos or for just being Jewish, simply for their identity. Like those are the kinds of things we want to have in mind. We want to attach ourselves to the earlier generations. And that's what Yaakov does, right? He can't go back quite as far as we can. And he's one of the ones that we go back to, but he is showing us that this is how we always begin a prayer. And that's true whether it's formal prayer or informal prayer. That is a great way to lead. It's a great way to start. And he reminds Hashem, you're the one who told me it was time to go home. And now I'm executing what you told me. And the way that I'm relating to you is in the following way. And if you don't know the song from Yonatan Razel, I encourage you to check it out online on YouTube or any other platform, where he sings this phrase so beautifully, katonti, right? I have become katan. So let's explain what this word might mean, right? I have become small. Could mean, as Sefaria translates it, right? I'm already katan from all of the chasidim and all of the emes that you've done for me. I never deserved it, right? It was never in my own merit that you were so kind to me. It was always in the merit of my father and my grandfather, my mother, maybe my grandmother, right? I was never deserving of any of it. And so here I am turning to you, since I was never deserving of any of the other things you've given me. And I'm telling you, Hashem, I need more help. I need more from you. That's one way to understand it. And I had seen in the name of one of the big Hasidic rabbis, whose name I don't remember, unfortunately, an idea that we need to look at this approach for like to take pause for a moment and realize who's talking, right? This is Yaakov. Yaakov, who by no means had an easy life up until now. Granted, he had some very special parents and grandparents, granted, he had a lot of good in his life, but it's because he chooses to focus on the positive that he says katonti. Because even if he looks around and can count his wives, thank God, and count his children, thank God, and count all of his wealth, wow, thank God, it's very possible that given all that it took for him to acquire those things, he could have had a totally different perspective, right? He could have been a person, and I don't think we would have blamed him for saying like, oh yeah, I'm very, very blessed, but hooey, what did it take to get me here? Right? How much did I have to go through? What kind of crazy father-in-law did I have to deal with? How many years of toil, of hard labor did I have to put in to get this wife and the children that came from them? Do you know the complicated marriages I have had, or I continue to have? Do you know how hard it is to have one wife having children all the time and the other one is infertile and she thinks that it's my fault? And like, nothing comes smoothly for Yaakov. And that actually is really true until the end of his life, right? That's one of the famous Rashis that at some point, right, Vayeshev Yaakov, that Yaakov is going to sit and he thinks like he's ready to finally chill. Things are finally calming down in his life. And whoa, that's when really all hell breaks loose within his nuclear family. But that's a Yaakov, right? Yaakov makes a decision that he will not be defined by the challenges, that he will not be defined by the pain that he suffers, the fact that he had to leave his family so unceremoniously and couldn't go home for so long, right? The fact that he had to strike out on his own, completely on his own, and build himself up from nothing, all the while dealing with very difficult personalities. That's not what he focuses on. He looks at his life and says, I never deserved any of this. I'm so blessed. And that's an incredible lesson, that as he looks around at the children that he is blessed with and the wives that he is blessed with and the wealth that he is blessed with, that he never for a moment takes for granted that he's supposed to have it, right? And he never thinks like, well, I sure paid my dues and that's why I managed to have all these things. He is not a kochi va'otzem yadi type of person. This is not because I worked hard, right? This is clearly, I never deserved any of this kindness in the first place. Hashem, you've always been so good to me. Maybe in the merit of my parents and grandparents, I don't know, but you have always been extraordinarily good to me. So that's one approach. Another approach, and this is the approach really that Rashi and some of the other Mefarshim take, is katonti mikol chasadim. I may at one point have been worthy. I may at one point have earned some of this kindness, but at this stage, there's been so much that I debited my account. I'm on empty. I'm in the red. Like I already owe you. To the degree that he feels for all of the kindness that he got, now he's katonti, meaning the original explanation is he starts off katonti. I never deserved one thing. The second explanation implies that if we look at his life as sort of like a bank account of merits and demerits, that he feels that after all of the chesed and all of the emes that Hashem has done for him, all of the kindness that he has consistently shown him, his account is just like constantly being diminished, and he's constantly shrinking in his capital. And now he's about to face Esav, where he needs like big time protection, and he thinks that he has used up all of his merit. And the reason why this approach, I think, is so worth spending 2 minutes talking about is because this is something that I think I would never have attributed to a Yaakov if I didn't read it in the Midrashim and in the Mefarshim myself, because this is something that we all do. And we tend to look at the Avos and Imahos as people who they had a different level of emunah than we do. They had a different understanding, a different type of relationship. Since, they and God communicated directly, we can't expect ourselves to have that level. So it's normal, so to speak. It's expected that we would have a thought process like this. But Yaakov, I hear from women in particular all the time, the sentiment of, well, I don't want to push my luck because we've already been so blessed. I tend to hear it most in relation to women who have been blessed with healthy children, whether it's one child or two children, or if they're blessed to have more than that. And as a couple is maybe deciding if they want to continue to grow their family, they have very serious conversations wherein they say to themselves, the way that it works is we've already been blessed. So like, we don't want to push our luck because maybe it will run out. Like maybe we've used up all the good that we've earned. And this is based, it's a very normal, as we see Yaakov himself, according to one explanation, has the same thought process. So this is very typical. However, it's totally faulty. And the reason why it's totally faulty is for the same reason we would say, like, why my husband always tells my children they're not allowed to develop rituals on game day. You shouldn't be thinking that whatever you're doing in your house is going to affect your team playing, 2,000 miles away from here. Things don't work like that. What happens is that when a person has a blessing in their life and they say thank you for that blessing, right? All that it does is sort of recharge, it like refills the account. There's no such thing as debiting an account with the Creator who has infinite storehouses of goodness and blessing to share. There is no such thing as a person's luck running out because it's not called luck. Right? Ein mazal Yisrael, there is no such thing as being governed by the stars for the Jewish people. When an individual has been blessed, it doesn't work that way. It's not a balance. There's not an account. It's not logical. It's not rational because we are blessed to be dealing with a Creator that doesn't work like that. Right? He showers people with blessing and we don't necessarily know why. He seems to withhold in some areas from some people, and we don't know why. It is unfortunately a very unsophisticated approach that we tend to think, well, if I just do this and this, then I'll push that button or pull that slot machine, and then Hashem will for sure give me whatever it is that I have, tabulated, I have earned from these things. We all know that it's not that simplistic, although it's very tempting to think that it is. But we look around and know that too many extraordinarily wonderful people have suffered or have not received the blessings that they wanted so much to have in their lives. And so we know it can't be that simple. It's not kindergarten level religion, right? It's much more complicated than that. And so we look at Yaakov, and what we understand from him is how normal, how typical it is to get the sense of, I ran out. There's nothing left for me. Like if Yaakov is going to say it, and why is Yaakov saying it? So some of the commentaries explain he was concerned that having not lived at home for so long, that he was very much lacking in the area of being able to honor and take care of his parents, which is a very real challenge that a lot of people have. Not everyone is blessed. Not everyone has made decisions that allowed them to live near parents or to have children live near them. This is certainly not a simplistic thing, very complicated in most families, who ends up living where. And yet Yaakov says, I did what I needed to do. My mother was the one who sent me away. I did the right thing. I moved away from home because she told me to. And yet for the last 20 plus years, I have not had the merit to serve my parents. And Esav has. Now, he maybe doesn't know how long ago Esav left or whatever, but he feels in this particular area, and there are a lot of sources that talk about kibbud av va'im, honoring one's parents, as being the mitzvah of Esav, that was something that Esav really cherished. It was something he excelled in, and that this was his special mitzvah. And Yaakov felt that he knew he was lacking in this area. Maybe he could beat Esav in other areas. Maybe he could learn him under the table, but he certainly had nothing on him when it came to honoring parents, which is, that's a difficult thing for a child to experience and to think about. And again, he did exactly what his mother told him to do. That being said, Yaakov has this sense that he is not worthy. And while it is totally appropriate for a person to feel humble and for a person to acknowledge that everything Hashem gives them is like too much, I'm too small for this, I don't deserve this, Hashem. And anava, humility, is one of the character traits that we work on constantly. Yet there is a line which we are really not supposed to cross, which is, I don't deserve it, and therefore I know you won't give it to me. Or I don't deserve it because my account ran out and there's not enough left in there for you to pay out. It doesn't work like that, right? Hashem has an infinite storehouse of blessing, an infinite storehouse of goodness. And we're not a people that functions by spreadsheets or, earnings and losses and all of that. Like, it doesn't all have to work out. And Hashem will make sure that, God willing, that everybody has the blessings that they need, the blessings that they deserve. So I think I wanted to make sure to focus on that part of the pasuk. We said everyone can leave at 1:00 if you like. I'm just going to spend a few more minutes. A few people had asked if we could go a little longer, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I'm just going to spend the next few minutes going over a couple of approaches to the last part of this pasuk. So what we saw so far is the idea of katonti, that either Yaakov feels, I never deserved any of this, and he just maintains his level of total humility. I don't deserve anything. Hashem is just all good, and everything I have is a gift from him, which of course shows us not just his humility, but his positive approach to things, his positive eye, his ayin tov, that he focuses on the good as opposed to all the challenges that all his brachos came with. As I've quoted my husband saying many, many times, he doesn't get confused with the fact that his greatest sources of blessing are also his greatest sources of stress, right? All of that wealth and all of his wives and all of his children, which are really a big headache, are also his greatest blessings. And he doesn't confuse it. He doesn't lose one in the other. So that was one approach. The other approach we looked at is that he has the sense that he's been somehow made smaller by all of the goodness that he's received. And maybe he feels that he has run out, and how that is not necessarily the approach. That's not always the best approach that we want to be taking, that's not the way that it works. Okay. The last part of the pasuk is very odd, because since when do we know that Yaakov crossed the Yarden, that he crossed the Jordan? So it's possible that just now he is crossing the Yarden in order to get back into the land of Israel, or maybe he crossed it on his way out of the land of Israel. But either way, I just want to offer one explanation, maybe two, for this phrase, ki v'makli avarti et Yarden hazeh, because with my staff, and as Safaria here points out, only bimakli, right? Alone. It was just me and my staff that I crossed the Jordan River, right? And now I've become two camps. So if we explain this to mean that he's referring to when he left the lands of Israel the first time, when he ran out of his parents' house. So what this is saying is, when I left my house, all I had was my walking stick. I had nothing. I had zero. And now here I am, Hashem, I have so many people in my life and so many possessions in my life. I had to split them into two camps. I went from rags to riches, right? I'm a walking, public service announcement for the fact that God can make the poorest man, the loneliest man in the world, can give him such a full life and such a full family that he has overflowing. He has to divide his camp into two. That's one explanation. The other explanation is that, Hashem, I want you to recognize, I want to make sure that you know that I recognize that everything I have came from you. And how does this explain that? Because how does this express that? Because I am a person, right? I was a man with I was a powerful man. I was a man who left my father-in-law's house with a big family and a lot of possessions. And now look at me. Now look at me. I went from riches to rags. Now I'm crossing the Yarden and I have just my staff. Incidentally, there's a famous midrash, well, I don't know how famous it is, but there's a midrash that says that on this crossing that Yaakov actually touches the Yarden, the Jordan River, with his walking staff, and it splits. That's what the midrash says, that he sort of has his own experience like Yehoshua does, many generations later when he's bringing the Jewish people into the land of Israel. This is sort of like his re-entry into the land of Israel, is like coming back, and he wanted to be a big conqueror. He wanted to be coming back to his family's house as a man with lots of wives and children and livestock and all of that. But Hashem, after all the things that I had, here I am standing here all by myself. And my family split into two camps, right? I'm not even able to come and show my family who I am as a full, as a full unit. We had to split into two totally different explanations, but both of which really show the same thing, that Yaakov is recognizing that nothing in his life is taken for granted, that everything he has comes from God. Everything, all the blessings, all the stresses, all of the complications, this is all part of his relationship with Hashem, is acknowledging that it's all None of it is because of him. It's all from Hashem himself. And it's just an interesting phrase that I'd never really paid attention to before. Ki b'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh, right? And this is just a great reminder that when a person is feeling, so blessed, they have so much, right? To remember that really at the end of the day, all you have is yourself and your staff. It's all a gift from God. And from the other approach, if a person is feeling all alone, is feeling like it's just me and my walking stick, right? Is to remember that Hashem is the one who builds a person, who gifts and blesses a person, and a person can go from rags to riches and riches to rags. You'll excuse that, like not such sophisticated analogy, but a person can go from having the most of everything to the littlest nothing, and from the littlest nothing to the most of everything overnight, because that's the way the world potentially could work, because at the end of the day, we know that Hashem is the one who is in control. So just a little bit of insight into some of these beautiful, beautiful psukim. Again, if you haven't checked out the song from Yonatan Razel, I encourage you to do so, as well as for any of you who are interested. The shul sent out an email today talking about Mikol HaChasadim, all of the chesed, with a bunch of information about chesed opportunities around Hanukkah time. This Sunday, we're volunteering at Mata. So I have a few spots left if any of you want to join or able to join. We're not taking a big group, so we'll be able to spread out. Number two is we have an opportunity to support and give strength and chizuk to the residents of Meizan Shalom. We have two homes here that house and take care of all of the needs of individuals with special needs in our community, which is a tremendous crown jewel in the community of Montreal, very, very special. And unfortunately, they have taken quite a hit from COVID, not only because COVID made its way through both residences, unfortunately. Thank God everybody is okay at this point, but they've been through a lot. They can't really have visitors. Things are very, very isolated there for both the residents and also for the staff, who happen to be unbelievable. They have a very, very low turnover rate of staff there, which is to the credit of all of the administrators and the lay people who help run Meizan Shalom, the amazing people many of whom are members of our shul. And we are very, very grateful to them for what they do for our community. So we are sort of offering an opportunity for people to buy Hanukkah gifts for the residents as well as for the staff there, and show our support and our appreciation. So you could check your shul email for that. As well, we're also going to collect new and gently used winter clothing, winter gear to be distributed to the homeless. We'll do that collection over the week of Hanukkah itself. So some opportunities for all of us to try and connect to the chesed and the emes that we talked about. Okay, have a great day, everybody. A good Shabbos, and enjoy the rest of your week. I'm just looking at the Yonatan Razel's song is Katonti. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jewel, you make a very good point that he wasn't so positive later. Yes, I actually thought of that he's taken to task. And I think it's because he doesn't do better in this regard. Like at one point in his life, it's clear that he is super positive and appreciative. And we sort of maybe have to look at which event in his life is actually so traumatic that it pushes him to have maybe a change, or maybe he was having a bad day. We could give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he found it was around his birthday and he was feeling a little down, but we'll get to